He filed for divorce to take the house. Not because our marriage was broken beyond repair, but because he thought a judge could hand him the only thing he'd ever truly wanted from me. A deed, a roof, proof that he'd won. I remember the exact moment I understood what he was doing. It wasn't the day he moved into the guest room. It wasn't the night he stopped looking at me at dinner like I was a person. It was a Tuesday afternoon in early spring, in a quiet suburb outside Seattle, when my phone buzzed and a notification popped up from the county records portal. Document recorded. My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. I clicked it, and there it was, in plain clinical language, like betrayal always looks when it's been filed properly, a notice of interest tied to our address. Our address. The house I had bought before I ever met him. The house my name was on. The house my paycheck had paid for. The house I had renovated one room at a time with paint under my nails and a playlist on repeat. He wasn't just divorcing me. He was positioning himself, like a man laying chess pieces down with a smile, convinced the endgame belonged to him. My name is Natalie Harper. I was 42 when this happened. I work in compliance for a mid-sized financial firm, the kind of job where you learn one truth early. People do the worst things when they think paperwork makes it legal. And my husband, Owen, had always loved paperwork. He loved strategies, loved the word leverage, loved the idea that life was a system, and he was smarter than everyone else inside it. That's what he told people. That's what he told me when we first met. He had a smooth, steady voice and a way of making ordinary statements sound like promises. "I'm a builder," he'd said on our third date, holding my coffee like it was a trophy. "I want a real life, a real home, something solid." I believed him because I wanted the same thing. The early years weren't terrible. They were normal, a little too polished, a little too look at us for my taste. But I told myself that was just Owen's personality. He liked looking successful. He liked saying "we" in front of people. He liked the house most of all. When friends came over, he'd guide them through the living room like a realtor. "This is the original hardwood," he'd say. "This kitchen cost a fortune," he'd joke. "This view." He'd pause, like the backyard trees were a private show just for him, and I'd smile, because it was our home, until it wasn't. The shift started quietly. Owen began asking innocent questions, the kind that sound harmless until you realize they're all leading somewhere. "Why is the mortgage only in your name again? Wouldn't it be simpler if we put it in both names? Don't married couples usually share everything?" He'd say it casually, while loading the dishwasher, while scrolling his phone, while brushing his teeth. And each time, I'd give the same answer, because I bought it before we met. Because it's cleaner for taxes. Because it protects us. He never argued. He just stored the information, like he was taking notes. Then one night, about 6 months before the divorce filing, I came home to find a folder on the kitchen island. My name on a sticky note. "Natalie. Sign when you can." The smiley face felt like a slap. Inside the folder were documents, not official court papers, but formatted like they wanted to be. Headings, paragraphs, blank lines, a quitclaim deed template, a refinance estimate, a marital property agreement draft. My hands went cold. Owen walked in behind me, too calm, too controlled. "Oh, good," he said, like he'd been waiting for this moment. "I had a friend look at some options. It just makes sense." I didn't look up. I kept flipping pages. Options for what? He leaned on the counter, relaxed. For us, for the future. If something happens to you, I don't want things tied up. We should make it simple. I finally met his eyes. What exactly are you asking me to sign? He gave that practiced half smile, just making it joint, like a real marriage. My throat tightened. Real marriage, I repeated, slow. Owen's expression flickered just slightly. The smile stayed, but the impatience showed underneath it. It's not a big deal, he said. Don't make it weird. That sentence, don't make it weird, was the first time I felt it. The pressure, the entitlement. Like I was being difficult for not handing him something I'd spent a decade building. I slid the folder back toward him. I'm not signing this. Owen stared at me, not angry, not shocked, just calculating. Okay, he said softly. We'll talk later. But we didn't talk later. From that night on, he started acting like the house was already half his. Like my refusal was a temporary glitch in his plan. He'd bring up renovations and then casually say, since it's basically ours. He'd mention selling one day and say, we'd split it, obviously. He'd joke in front of friends. She acts like I'm some kind of gold digger. I just want my fair share. Fair share of a house I paid for. Then came the day he said it out loud. The real truth. When he thought I couldn't hear, I was upstairs in my office on a conference call when I heard Owen's voice downstairs on speakerphone. Confident, almost amused. Yeah, he was saying, if she won't sign, I'll just file. In this state, it doesn't matter. Married equals community property. Half is mine. A pause, then his laugh. Yeah, I know. She thinks she's protected. She's not. I stood completely still, my head set heavy on my ears, my co-workers' voices fading into noise. I didn't storm downstairs. I didn't confront him. Because something in me, something trained by years of compliance work, did what it always does when it senses danger. It went quiet. It observed. It documented. When my call ended, I walked down the stairs like nothing happened. Owen was in the kitchen, humming, making himself a smoothie like he hadn't just declared war. Hey, he said brightly. How was work? I stared at him for a heartbeat. Then I smiled. Busy, I said, same as always. He nodded, satisfied, like I was still predictable. That night, after he fell asleep, I sat at the dining table with my laptop and started pulling records, every document I could find, closing disclosures, mortgage statements, renovation invoices, property tax receipts, insurance policies. I created a folder, then another, then another. I built a timeline because Owen believed divorce was a weapon. But to me, divorce was a process, and processes can be won. 2 weeks later, he served me. Not in person, not with any dignity. He had a process server hand me papers in the parking lot of my office building, like he wanted an audience. I took the envelope with steady hands. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't ask why. I already knew why. Inside the petition, he listed the house as marital property. He requested exclusive use of the home during proceedings. He requested temporary orders to stay in the house, while I relocated. I read that line twice. Relocated. Like I was furniture. That night, Owen walked into the living room and leaned against the doorway, like a man testing a victory speech. You saw the papers, he said. Yes, I answered. He waited for emotion, for fear, for pleading. When I didn't give him any, he stepped closer. I'm not trying to hurt you, he said, voice low and reasonable, but I'm not walking away with nothing. I put years into this marriage. I looked at him calmly. And what exactly do you think you're walking away with? His eyes narrowed, but he kept the mask on. Half, he said. At least, that's how it works. I tilted my head slightly. That's how you think it works. He gave a short laugh. Natalie, don't be naive. Naive? I almost smiled, because if Owen knew anything about me, if he'd ever paid attention past the things he wanted, he would have known I'm not naive. I'm thorough. I set the papers down on the coffee table. Okay, I said softly. Let's do it your way. Owen blinked, surprised. That's it? I nodded. You filed, so we'll follow the process. His shoulders relaxed, like he'd just heard the magic words. Good, he said, because I already talked to an attorney, and trust me, you don't want this to get ugly. I held his gaze. It won't, I said. Not for me. That night, Owen slept like a man who believed the next chapter was already written. He didn't know. I was writing my own. The next morning I met with my attorney. Her name was Grace Lynn, mid-50s, sharp eyes, quiet voice. The kind of woman who doesn't waste words, because she doesn't need to. She read the petition, then looked up at me. Did you buy the house before marriage? Yes. Do you have documentation? I slid a neatly organized binder across the desk. Grace's eyebrows lifted slightly. This is impressive, she murmured, flipping tabs. I exhaled slowly. He thinks he can take it. Grace closed the binder. People think lots of things, she said. We're going to deal in facts. She explained the basics: separate property, commingling risks, reimbursement claims, the way a home can become complicated if you mix funds, if you refinance together, if you add someone to title. I listened without interrupting. Then I said, very carefully, what if I tell you he tried to get me to sign a quitclaim deed? Grace's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. When? I told her. What did you do? I refused. Grace nodded slowly. And now he filed. Yes. Grace leaned back. Okay, she said. Then we plan for two things. One, protecting the property classification. Two, responding to his request for exclusive use. I swallowed. He wants me out. Grace's voice stayed calm. Then we make sure he's the one who regrets asking. I left her office feeling not relieved exactly, but aligned, like my spine had clicked back into place. When I got home, Owen was already acting like the house belonged to him. He'd moved some of my books off the living room shelf. He'd rearranged the pantry. He'd started calling the guest room my office, like he'd claimed territory. I watched it all in silence, because while he was playing landlord, I was building a case. And there was one more thing Owen didn't know, one detail he never asked about, because he assumed he understood everything. Years ago, long before I met him, I had created a small consulting LLC for side work. Nothing glamorous, just risk assessments and compliance audits for local firms who needed short-term help. I never used it much after marriage, but I kept it active, and I kept it separate. Separate accounts, separate records, separate legal identity. And 3 months ago, when I felt Owen shifting, when I saw the hunger in his eyes every time he walked through my house, I did something quiet, something unromantic, something protective. I transferred certain renovation reimbursements, properly documented, through my LLC. It wasn't a trick. It was a shield. And now, Owen was about to slam himself into it, full speed, smiling. That Friday, he invited his sister over. I came downstairs to find them at the kitchen table with iced coffees, laughing too loudly, like they were celebrating. His sister Mia glanced at me with fake sympathy. "I heard," she said. "I'm so sorry. But these things happen." Owen reached over and squeezed her hand like he was the wounded party. Then he looked at me. "We're going to keep things civil," he announced. "No drama." I nodded. "Of course." He smiled, satisfied. Then Mia leaned forward, eyes bright. "So, where are you going to go?" she asked. The question was sharpened, disguised as curiosity. I picked up my mug, took a slow sip, and set it down gently. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. Owen's smile froze. Mia blinked. Owen laughed, but it wasn't real. "Natalie," he said, voice tight, "we'll have a temporary order soon. My lawyer said—" "I know what you believe your lawyer said," I replied softly. Owen's eyes narrowed. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I tilted my head. "I'm not," I said. "You are." The room went quiet. Owen's jaw flexed. Mia shifted uncomfortably, suddenly less amused. And Owen, in that moment, realized I wasn't scared, which meant his plan needed more force, more pressure, more cruelty. He didn't say it then, but I saw it in his eyes. He was going to try to push me out before court ever had a chance to tell him no. And I was going to let him try, because the second he crossed a certain line, the entire story would change, and he wouldn't even see it coming. The first thing Owen did was start acting like I was a guest in my own home. Not openly, not in a way you could easily point to and say, "That's abuse." He did it the way people like Owen always do it, with tiny edits, small revisions, quiet power grabs that add up, until you're standing in your own kitchen wondering why you suddenly feel like you're trespassing. He changed the Wi-Fi password. I noticed it when my laptop disconnected in the middle of a video call. I tried to reconnect twice. No luck. I walked downstairs and found Owen on the couch, scrolling calmly, like nothing in the world could surprise him. "Hey," I said light. "Did the Wi-Fi reset?" He didn't look up. "I changed it," he said. I paused. "Okay, what is it?" He finally glanced at me, slow and deliberate. "I'm not comfortable with you having access to my accounts right now," he said. "This is a separation." It was a ridiculous sentence, because the internet account was in my name. But he said it like he was doing something reasonable, like I was the one who didn't understand boundaries. I stared at him for a heartbeat, then I nodded. "All right," I said, and walked back upstairs. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. Because in my world, the loudest person is rarely the most prepared person. That night, I used my phone's hotspot to finish my work, and I added one more line to my growing timeline. Day 3 after filing, changed Wi-Fi password, attempted to restrict access to utilities. 2 days later, the thermostat started acting strange. I'd wake up freezing. Then I'd come home to a house that felt like a sauna. Owen would shrug. "Must be the system," he'd say. But I knew our system. I'd chosen it. I'd paid for it. I had the install documents in a folder labeled HVAC. So I checked the app, and there it was. Owen's email, added as an administrator. I stared at the screen and felt something quiet settle inside my chest. Not panic, not heartbreak, a kind of clarity so sharp it almost felt like relief. Because now I wasn't guessing. Now I was watching a pattern. He was building a story where I was unstable, I was unreasonable, I was making things difficult, and he was the calm, responsible man forced to take control. That was the narrative he wanted to sell the court. And courts, they hate chaos. So I understood his strategy. Make the house uncomfortable. Make daily life stressful. make me explode, make me leave, then call it voluntary. That weekend, he invited his parents over. No warning, no message. I was in the laundry room when I heard voices in the living room and the sound of shoes on hardwood. His mother, Sharon, had a sharp, clipped way of speaking. Like every sentence was a judgment dressed in politeness. His father, Glenn, talked less, but when he did, it was always a little too loud. I walked in and found them sitting like they belonged there. Sharon glanced up, eyes scanning me like she was checking a label. "Oh," she said. "Hi, Natalie." Owen stood behind the couch, hands on the backrest like a man hosting a tour. "Mom and Dad just wanted to check in," he said. "Support?" Sharon smiled thinly. "We heard you're going to be moving soon," she said. There it was. Not a question, a statement, like it had already been decided. I kept my expression neutral. "I'm not moving," I said. Sharon's smile tightened. "Well," she said, "we'll see what the judge says." I looked at Owen. He gave a small shrug. Like, what can I do? But his eyes said something else. They said, "Watch how easy it is for me to gather a crowd." They said, "You're alone." That night, after they left, Owen cornered me in the hallway. "You embarrassed my mother," he said, voice low. I blinked. "By saying the truth?" "You don't know what the truth is going to be," he snapped. "Not yet." I held his gaze. "I do," I said quietly. He stared at me like he wanted to say more, but stopped. Because if he said the real thing, if he admitted this was about the house, it would ruin the mask. So he walked away, and that was when the next phase began, the performance. Owen started documenting me, not openly, but in that subtle way, where you notice the phone angled toward you at dinner. You notice the camera light blink when you walk by. You notice he suddenly speaks in a calm, deliberate voice, like he's trying to sound like a victim, in case someone is listening. "You don't have to be hostile," he'd say when I wasn't hostile. "Please stop yelling," he'd say when I wasn't yelling. "I'm trying to be respectful," he'd say when he was the one pushing buttons. It was gaslighting, with paperwork in mind. One Tuesday morning, I came downstairs and saw a stack of mail on the table. My name. But the envelope was already opened. I picked it up slowly. It was a statement from my personal savings account, the one I'd kept long before marriage. My stomach tightened. I turned to Owen. "Did you open my mail?" He didn't flinch. "It came to the house," he said. "We're married." I stared at him. His expression stayed calm, but his eyes were bright. He wanted me to react. He wanted anger. He wanted a reason to say, "See, she's unstable." So I did the opposite. I set the envelope down. "Okay," I said. "Good to know." And I walked upstairs. Inside my office, I sat down and did what I do best. I moved quietly. I called my bank. I updated mailing preferences. I set alerts. I changed passwords. Then I called Grace. "Owen opened my mail," I said. Grace didn't sound surprised. "Document it," she said. "Keep your tone neutral. Don't confront him. Let him build his own file against himself." My jaw tightened. He's trying to force me out. "I know," Grace said. "So we make sure you're safe, and we make sure every attempt he makes becomes a liability." 2 days later, Owen tried a new angle. He walked into the kitchen while I was making coffee and placed a printed sheet on the counter. "Temporary schedule," he announced. I glanced down. It was a list. Kitchen use, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. for Owen. Laundry room, Saturdays, Owen only. Living room, evenings, Owen. And at the bottom, bedroom access, Natalie to remain in guest room. I stared at it, then I looked up. "You made a schedule for my house," I said. Owen's face hardened. "Our house," he corrected, "until the court decides." I took a slow breath. "I'm not following this," I said. He leaned forward. "You don't have a choice." My heart beat once, hard. That sentence, "you don't have a choice," was the line. Not because it was shocking, because it told me what was coming next. Control, escalation, and eventually a move that would force me to call the police, or to leave. Either way, he'd try to spin it. So I decided something that day. I would not be the one to create the chaos. I would be the one to survive it and record it. That night, I installed 2 discrete interior security cameras, legal in my state for my own home and common areas, positioned in a way that covered entry points and shared space. No audio, just video, just facts. I told Grace. She approved. "Do not tell him," she said, "and don't get into a confrontation about it. You're collecting evidence, not revenge." Evidence, that word, became my anchor. Because Owen wanted emotions. He wanted a scene. I gave him nothing. Then, on a Friday afternoon, the first real shove came. I came home from work and the garage door wouldn't open. The keypad beeped, then flashed red. I tried the remote. Nothing. I stood in my driveway, staring at a house that looked exactly the same, while something inside it had changed. I walked to the front door. My key worked. But when I stepped inside, Owen was waiting. He stood in the entryway with his arms crossed, like he was blocking a boundary. "The garage code changed," he said casually. I didn't speak. I just stared at him. He smiled, faintly. "I need to protect my property," he said. "My property." I exhaled slowly. "You want to play that game?" I said quietly. He tilted his head. "What game?" "This one," I said, "where you pretend you're the owner." Owen's smile fell. "You're being dramatic," he said. "I'm trying to be safe." He turned and walked away, like the conversation was done. And that's when I noticed it. A new lock on the inside door leading from the garage into the house. A lock I hadn't approved, a lock I hadn't bought. My pulse stayed steady, but my hands felt cold, because this wasn't just inconvenience anymore. This was access control. This was him testing how far he could go. That night, I didn't sleep much. I lay in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, listening to Owen move around, too late, too quiet, too intentional. At 2:13 a.m., I heard the printer downstairs. At 2:17 a.m., a drawer opened and closed. At 2:21 a.m., footsteps paused outside my door, then moved away. In the morning, he acted normal. "Morning," he said, pouring coffee into his mug like he was still my husband. I watched him. "Did you print something last night?" I asked. He didn't even blink. "Probably," he said. "I couldn't sleep." I nodded slowly. Then I went to my office and checked my interior camera footage, and my stomach clenched. Owen had been in my file cabinet, the one in my office, the one that held the binder of documents I'd prepared. He opened it. He flipped through tabs. He took photos. Then he put it back like he'd never touched it. I sat at my desk and stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I was scared, because I was furious, and because I understood something new. Owen wasn't just trying to win. He was trying to sabotage my ability to defend myself. He was trying to see what I had so he could build around it. He wanted to anticipate. He wanted to counter. He wanted to control the outcome. So that morning, I did 2 things. First, I moved the binder out of the house. I took it to a safe deposit box. Second, I did something Owen would never expect from me. I stopped reacting like a spouse and started acting like a witness. That I texted him. Not emotional, not accusing, just facts. Nathaniel, I noticed the garage code and interior door lock were changed. Please restore access. Also, do not enter my office or access my records without consent. I signed it. Natalie. He replied within minutes. Stop being paranoid. I didn't do anything. If you keep acting like this, it'll prove you're unstable. There it was. The trap. He wanted my response. He wanted me to defend myself. He wanted to label me, so I didn't. I sent one line. Noted. That single word made him angrier than any argument because it didn't give him fuel. It didn't give him drama. It gave him a paper trail. That evening, I got a call from Grace. We have the hearing date for temporary orders, she said. My stomach tightened. When? 2 weeks, she replied. He's pushing for exclusive use of the home. I swallowed. And? Grace's voice stayed calm. And we're going to push back. Hard. I stared out my office window at the backyard trees, swaying gently like nothing in the world was wrong. Owen thinks he's going to stand in court and tell them I'm the problem, I said. Grace paused. Then let him, she said. Because the best part about people like Owen is that they always talk too much. 2 days later, Owen started taking it further. He began turning off lights when I entered a room. He'd accidentally lock the laundry room door on my laundry day. He'd move my groceries in the fridge like he was rearranging my reality. And then he did the thing I still remember as the moment everything snapped into a sharper, colder shape. I came home and my laptop, my work laptop, wouldn't turn on. I tried again. Nothing. The charger was missing. I searched the kitchen, the living room, my office. Then I found it. In the trash. Bent, damaged, like someone had stepped on it. My throat tightened. I walked into the hallway and called Owen's name. He appeared slowly, like he'd been expecting this. What? He asked. I held the charger up. This was in the trash, I said, voice steady. Why? Owen shrugged. No idea, he said. Maybe you dropped it. I stared at him. He met my gaze, and then smiled. A small smile. The kind of smile that says, prove it. I felt my hands tremble just slightly, and I realized this was no longer a marriage ending. This was a hostile environment. This was him trying to break me. So I did what I always do in a crisis. I created a protocol. I started taking pictures of every room before I went to bed. I kept a log of every incident with timestamps. I stored backups of everything outside the home. And I made one decision that would change the entire war. I moved my paycheck. Not the money in our joint account. Not anything that would be seen as retaliation. Just my direct deposit into an account Owen had no access to. Because if he wanted to starve me out, I was going to make sure I stayed fed. The next week, Owen's attorney sent a letter demanding I vacate the home immediately for the sake of peace. I read it slowly, then forwarded it to Grace. Grace responded with one sentence. Good. He's getting impatient. Impatient people make mistakes, and Owen was about to make the biggest one. It happened on a rainy Thursday. I came home from work, pulled into the driveway, and noticed something off. The porch light was on, in the middle of the afternoon. The front curtains were drawn, even though I always left them half open, and the air felt wrong, like the house was holding its breath. I walked up to the front door. I put my key in the lock. It wouldn't turn. I tried again. Nothing. My heartbeat slowed, not sped up. because the moment you're trained for is never the moment you panic. I look closer. New lock. Shiny. Unfamiliar. My mouth went dry. Owen had changed the locks. And in that instant, standing on my own porch in the rain, I understood exactly what he was doing. He wasn't waiting for a judge. He wasn't waiting for temporary orders. He was trying to make his own reality and force the court to accept it later. I stepped back, stared at the door, and felt something inside me go very still. Then I pulled out my phone, and I started recording, because now he'd crossed the line that turned a divorce into something else entirely, something that didn't end with a negotiation, something that ended with consequences. And I was going to let him walk straight into them. I didn't knock. I didn't shout. I didn't demand he open the door. I stood on the porch, rain soaking into my jacket, phone held steady in my hand, camera recording the lock, the frame, the address number on the siding, evidence, that word again. I stepped back, made sure the timestamp was visible, then dialed my attorney. Grace picked up on the second ring. He changed the locks, I said calmly. I'm locked out of my own home. There was a pause on the line. Then her voice dropped, focused, precise. Are you safe? Yes. Good. Don't try to get inside. Call the police. This is illegal self-help eviction. Illegal. That word landed solidly, because Owen liked words that sounded powerful. Leverage, strategy, control. He never liked words that came with consequences. The patrol car arrived 15 minutes later. The officer was young, polite, visibly uncomfortable, as if domestic situations were puzzles he didn't want to solve. I handed him my ID. My name is on the deed, I said. I have proof. My husband changed the locks without a court order. Owen opened the door halfway through the explanation. He looked surprised to see the police, not scared, annoyed. What's going on? He asked, playing confused. The officer turned to him. Sir, did you change the locks? Owen hesitated, just a fraction of a second too long. I did, he said. This is a divorce. I'm trying to protect my property. The officer glanced at me, then back at Owen. Do you have a court order granting exclusive possession? Owen's jaw tightened. No, but then you can't lock her out, the officer said. She's a legal occupant. Owen laughed lightly, like this was all a misunderstanding. This is ridiculous, he said. She's unstable. She's been... The officer raised a hand. Sir, this isn't the time. I stood quietly, because Owen was unraveling. The officer told him to unlock the door immediately or face consequences. Owen looked at me, really looked at me, and in that moment, I saw it. Fear, not fear of losing me, fear of losing control. He unlocked the door. The sound of the bolt sliding back felt louder than it should have, like something breaking. That night, Owen didn't speak to me. He stayed in the guest room. I stayed in mine. The house felt different, like it had chosen a side. The next morning, Grace called. Good job calling the police, she said. I'm filing an emergency motion. For what? For attempted illegal eviction and for temporary exclusive use for you. I closed my eyes. You think we can get it? Grace didn't hesitate. He handed it to us. Owen didn't know yet, but he would. At the temporary orders hearing, he arrived confident. He wore a tailored suit, carried a leather folder, smiled at the bailiff like they were old friends. I wore a simple blouse, flat shoes, no makeup beyond the basics. I looked boring. Judges love boring. Owen's attorney spoke first. He painted a picture, a distressed husband, an unstable wife, a hostile living environment. He talked about emotional volatility, about daily conflict, about the need for calm. Owen nodded along. The judge listened. Then Grace stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't dramatize. She laid out facts, timeline, screenshots, video stills, police report. She showed the lock change, the thermostat access, the opened mail, the charger in the trash, the security footage of Owen entering my office. Then she slid the deed forward, purchased before marriage, paid with separate funds, never commingled, never retitled. The courtroom went very quiet. Grace finished with one sentence. This is not a man seeking peace. This is a man attempting to force possession through intimidation. The judge leaned forward. Owen, she said, did you change the locks? Owen swallowed. Yes. Without a court order? Yes. She closed the file. Temporary exclusive use of the residence is granted to Natalie Harper, she said, effective immediately. Owen's head snapped up. What? He blurted. The judge's voice sharpened. You will vacate the property within 48 hours. Any further interference will result in sanctions. The word vacate finally landed where it belonged. On him. He turned to his attorney, panicked. This isn't fair, he whispered. But fairness was never the issue. Process was. 2 days later, Owen packed his things. No audience, no speech, no victory, just boxes. When he left, the house felt lighter, quieter, like it could finally breathe again. The divorce dragged on for months. Owen tried reimbursement claims, tried emotional appeals, tried painting himself as the victim. But the house never left my name, not a single inch. At the final hearing, the judge looked tired and unimpressed. She finalized the divorce, denied Owen's remaining claims, ordered him to pay a portion of my legal fees due to misconduct. When it was over, Owen didn't look at me. He walked out like a man who had lost something he believed he deserved. Months later, I sat on my back porch with a cup of coffee, watching sunlight filter through the trees. Same house, same walls, same quiet. But I was different. Because here's what I learned. People like Owen don't fall apart when you fight them. They fall apart when you let them expose themselves. He filed for divorce to take the house. I let him try. And in the process, he showed everyone exactly who he was. And I kept exactly what was mine.